New Bitcoin negative law introduced here in the USA. Also, we now have the US central bank sending a clear signal toward interest rate cuts. They're even calling for a 50 basis point cut now. Scott Bassett is speaking about crypto ETFs here for the first time. We have Warren Buffett in panic mode. Is he pulling an exit scam here? Did he make a massive miscalculation, or is this just a routine thing? Tom Lee is also here with a major market assessment and a very, very exciting price prediction. Prediction here for Bitcoin. Let's dive into all of this now. We're still just before the government shutdown here. There are a lot of things in the pipeline. QE, the end of QT, central bank policy, and much more. Let's dive into all of this. Before we get started, let's take a quick second. Go ahead and hit the like button below for higher Bitcoin prices. Really, really important. As a thank you, I'll show you this beautiful picture. And now we have Fed Governor Stephen Miron, who is calling on the Fed to cut interest rates by 50 basis points. We've heard these announcements or demands from Miron several times now. Miron is still one of the top candidates when it comes to replacing Jerome Powell. Definitely one of the most bullish people at the US central bank. That would clearly be a positive sign for Bitcoin. We also have President Trump, who is once again saying inflation is under control. So, inflation is under control here. We can massively lower interest rates here. Then we have new massive purchases, this time from Stripe, the company that also includes Vivek Ramaswamy, the former presidential candidate in the US. Here, a new accumulation of 1,567 Bitcoin. Stripe now has a total of 7,525 Bitcoin. And that's very, very interesting, because it's one of the companies, or rather, it's the company, that started its preferred shares with the fewest Bitcoin on its balance sheet. Now we have Stripe, Metaplanet, and Strategy, who are potentially launching their preferred shares. Metaplanet isn't quite there yet, but Stripe has now also raised a lot of money through these SATA preferred shares. And now we have one of the most impressive Bitcoin laws here, Bitcoin legislative drafts that have been introduced here. Here, Dennis Porter also says it, a new Senate bill protects the self-custody of Bitcoin and digital assets as a right. Incredibly bullish here. The whole thing here, Section 107, brings additional clarity for developers, anyone who provides blockchain software, wallets, nodes, and so on, or operates infrastructure, is not automatically considered a financial service provider. That protects innovation in open source projects. I just wonder what happened to the samurai guys. There was the indictment, which I already mentioned. I mean, it can't be that the US presents itself as a Bitcoin and crypto hotspot and then locks up some developers just because they write a bit of open source code. So, that's still not entirely clear to me. Here, we have Section 103, which guarantees that everyone can hold their digital assets themselves and transfer them directly peer-to-peer. So, without a bank, without a middleman. That's also what I always tell you. Get yourself a hardware wallet. Your assets are really well protected there, so you don't have to rely on a third party, a bank, and so on. I'll put a link down below to the TREZOR hardware wallet, probably the best hardware wallet currently on the market, now even with an open source secure element, which is brand new in the TREZOR 7 hardware wallet. I'll put the link down below, coolbitcoin.de. There's even a discount there. Now, some people have criticized this, saying, okay, hey, that's cool and all with the whole bill, but there's nothing in there about Bitcoin. In fact, the bill only mentions digital assets, but we've seen that before. These are the kinds of legislative drafts that are, of course, kept very, very broad, and they don't want to limit themselves to just Bitcoin, but instead handle the whole thing in a very open way. So now we have easy access to exchanges, more institutional capital that could come in, and actually a market structure, or rather, a bipartisan, cross-party market structure. And I hope that what many have said, Senator Ruhlamis has talked about it, Bo Hines has talked about it, the former executive director under Donald Trump, that this is needed to push through the strategic Bitcoin reserve in the USA. We are seeing some major developments here. Eric Balchunas, an ETF expert, is saying it here as well. You can probably say with certainty that this is the first time the finance minister has tweeted about ETFs. He's now posting a tweet here about ETFs, or rather, ETPs, as he says here. Today, the Treasury and the IRS have issued new guidelines that lay out a clear path for crypto exchange-traded products, ETPs, on how digital assets can be staked and staking rewards can be shared with their retail investors. It's positive, but on the other hand, not really relevant for Bitcoin, because as I understand it, this is mainly about the whole shitcoin thing. It could be that it's indirectly positive for Bitcoin, of course. I found it interesting that Eric Balchunas mentioned it, but for Bitcoin, I'm not sure if it's really a big deal. I found it interesting that Warren Buffett is sending out his last shareholder letter to the shareholders of Berkshire Hathaway. So, Warren Buffett is obviously a massive legend here, but he never really understood Bitcoin. And now there are also articles about this. Buffett is saying goodbye with record profits and a record cash reserve. Before Warren Buffett steps down as CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, the 95-year-old holding company reports a 17% increase in share price gains. The cash reserves are also continuing to rise. For some investors, this raises questions. So, at first this all sounds good, but now there's also, let's say, a bit of a downside, the dark side. We all know that all these spending bills are coming now, the €2,000 stimulus checks from Donald Trump that have been announced. Then we have the big beautiful bill, we have the Federal Reserve, which is on the verge of QE, and we have the Treasury, which could potentially do QE here as well. And now there's this flood of money coming in, and many are saying that Warren Buffett is making his exit scam even sooner, before all his cash reserves get eaten up by inflation. Because we have to understand that what Warren Buffett is doing here is actually smart. If there's a massive crash here and the economy crashes down by 50 or 60%, then of course Warren Buffett can buy in cheap at the bottom because he's sitting on record cash reserves. But if Donald Trump throws a wrench in his plans and just floods the entire money supply, if everything gets flooded with newly printed money, then Warren Buffett could have a big problem here. And that's what a lot of people are interpreting into this right now. Maybe he's pulling out before the whole thing crashes and burns. Although I also don't think that Berkshire Hathaway, after performing so well over the past years, is suddenly going to crash and burn now. So, let's not get carried away here. Warren Buffett has always made around 20%. Those are, of course, legendary returns he's achieved, but compared to Bitcoin, he still hasn't managed to beat it. And on the other hand, he was always bashing Bitcoin. There's also supposed to be an exciting new documentary coming out about Warren Buffett. You can really look forward to that. I've got something up my sleeve for that, in cooperation with someone I'm not allowed to mention yet. And now we have the latest market assessment from Tom Lee. This is really, really exciting. He talks about the bull case for Bitcoin, which could be weakened by Ethereum. That's definitely very, very interesting. I always say, focus on Bitcoin, but now something could happen here, just like Katie would already mention. Let's listen in.
How far do you think we could get on the Bitcoin by the end of the year?
Well, I think people have dampened their expectations for Bitcoin because partly because Bitcoin's been treading water, and there have been a lot of OGs, original Bitcoiners that are selling above 100,000. But
that's exactly what I've told you many times before. OGs are selling at 100,000. That's why the Bitcoin price is still struggling to reach new all-time highs. So, we still have selling momentum in the market right now.
It is still an underallocated asset class. So I think Bitcoin actually potentially can get to the high 100,000s, maybe even 200,000 by the end of the year.
Still a very underallocated asset class. So, I think that Bitcoin could actually, and potentially, go up to the high 100,000s, or maybe even up to $200,000 during that particular period of time. But Bitcoin could also run into problems.
I think it's a big ask. But to me, what's more obvious is Ethereum can have a huge movement here. And because even Cathie Wood wrote about it, she thinks stable coins have been cannibalizing demand for Bitcoin. And gold and tokenized gold is cannibalizing demand for Bitcoin. But stable coins and tokenized gold run on smart contract blockchains like Ethereum, and Wall Street is building, and Larry Fink wants to tokenize everything on the blockchain. That means Ethereum is where people are starting to raise their growth expectations. And if you're raising your growth expectations, then your discount to the future is going up. So I think that there's a bigger move in Ethereum, and Mark Newton, our head of technical strategy, thinks we can be like 9 to 12,000 by January. I think that's about right. I think Ethereum, just 3,600 more than doubles between now and year-end, or between now and January.
So, very, very interesting. He says here that basically tokenized gold and Ethereum are cannibalizing Bitcoin a bit because expectations are simply higher here, so some of the capital will flow into those, and when it flows there, it's missing from Bitcoin. But here you really have to clearly distinguish between the short term and the long term. Of course, it can always happen that Ethereum or even gold or something like that outperforms Bitcoin for a while. But we also have to look at the whole thing from a long-term perspective. Which is the better asset in the long run? Which one has the better properties here? And you really come to the clear conclusion that, in the end, it's Bitcoin that has the superior qualities here. Everything else comes with centralization risks again, even with tokenized gold and the like. Of course, all of these have certain limitations, certain third-party risks. I also found this very, very interesting here. She also mentions it here. Gold is very, very difficult to verify, because here a post is made. It's been a while and I'm going to keep asking until we get the answer. When are we finally going to get the Fort Knox audit? Yeah, the Fort Knox audit isn't happening, and then people comment below, well, it's no surprise it's not happening, because gold is very, very hard to verify. Even if they did a gold audit, who knows if the gold would still be there 3 months later. You could just do the audit and then suddenly ship all the gold away again. And then you'd have to do another audit, and you can't exactly do that every month. And in the meantime, you'd get cheated behind your back again and the gold would be taken away again. With Bitcoin, we have audits every 10 minutes. Bam, 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 on average a new block comes every 10 minutes. We can check it ourselves. We don't have to go to Fort Knox or anything like that. Here, India's richest man is saying that governments should rely on Bitcoin, and things are moving very, very quickly now, the development. Here's another very, very interesting assessment from Carl B. Menger. He says here, the mega credit card of the US government for transportation and gas production, TGA, or actually, that's completely mistranslated here. What he really means is that the TGA account is exploding, and all of this could soon be pumped into the markets. And as soon as the US government shutdown is resolved, this money will flow directly into the economy. And he's already saying it, folks, buckle up, buckle up. So I'm really curious whether this will be a smash-style release or if it'll be more of a slow flow into the market. But of course, that's probably going to have a positive effect on liquidity as well. Yeah, guys, let me know down in the comments how you see the whole thing. If you still want to buy Bitcoin, I'll drop a link for you below, 21 Bitcoin, check it out. Use the code BitcoinHotel to save up to 20% on the fee and save when buying Bitcoin. And if you're still looking for the perfect hardware wallet, as I said, there's a link to TREZOR below. Alright, then I'll see you soon. Until then, peace.